AI distillation attacks, state-backed intellectual property theft, asymmetrical AI arms race, and what this all means for you? This is Upstream Risk. I'm Elliot Mattice. I work at the intersection of cybersecurity, federal compliance, and geopolitical risk. On this channel, I translate upstream signals into practical insight so security leaders can act before the window closes. By now, you've probably seen the news that Chinese AI companies have attacked Anthropic and Google using something called a distillation attack. So what is distillation? Well, frankly, it's a legitimate method to train new and upcoming AI models against the outputs of advanced frontier AI models. So why does this matter in the context of China? Well, historically, China has used intellectual property theft as a means to accelerate their technology deployments without investing in R&D. So why does this matter? Well, using a distillation attack specifically to AI, China can now release AI models that are less restrained ahead of the frontier models that we are developing here in the United States. It positions China, of course, ahead of the United States, but ahead of all of the other Western governments as well. This is an AI arms race. Today, we're going to apply the Upstream Risk Framework to this story to understand who are the players, what are their motivations, and what are their next moves? And most importantly, what decisions can you make today to protect yourself from incidents and risk in the future? So let's take a look at the players. We have China and the Chinese AI companies. We have Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, and those foundational models. We have the United States and Western governments. And we have all of the other technology companies who rely on those foundational models to develop their products and services. So let's look at China, the Chinese AI companies, and what their motivations may be. Well, historically, we have seen that China and these Chinese AI companies or other technology companies use intellectual property theft as a means to accelerate their deployment of technologies without the investment in research and development. Of course, the motivation is obvious. Why spend the money? Why spend the time? Why invest in the people, in the factories, whatever it may be, to build something from the ground up when you can use your accesses to extract that intelligence out of other sources and apply that to your development so that you can leapfrog everyone else. We've seen it for decades. We've seen it through chips that were embedded in part of the F-22 fighter jets. And they were able to extract out blueprints and inputs that were being used for the R&D. We've seen it in the space shuttle program. We've seen it across every technology, every service, every new development that is out there. The Chinese and Chinese AI companies, Chinese companies in general, are trying to do their best to do their least amount of work. So these companies, DeepSeek, Moonshot, and Minimax, have used distillation attacks for that exact purpose. They've tried to extract as much as they can from Claude, from Gemini, to build these new models without the same kinds of restraints and regulations that apply to the models here in the United States. So we saw 16 million exchanges across 24,000 fraud accounts on Claude alone. So the motivation seems pretty clear. They want to do more with less and faster. They want to position themselves ahead of all of the other competition, all of the other Western governments. This is an AI arms race, and through these methods and tactics, they seem to be winning. Next, let's look at OpenAI, Google, Anthropic. Of course, their motivations here are to protect their intellectual property. They have enough competition between themselves as they release models, they release updates, that they don't need to then also be competing against the Chinese AI companies who are trying to steal and extract all of the information, all of the wisdom and intelligence that they've put into this process. They have, of course, invested billions of dollars each. They have their own companies to run. And like any company, protecting that intellectual property is paramount. So next we have the United States and Western governments. Of course, when you put on the geopolitical lens here, the competition with China and these adversarial nations is critical to national security. We've already seen different methods to restrict chip purchasing by the Chinese government. There have been sanctions and trade agreements that have limited what China and adversarial nations can do with the technology. So, seeing that these distillation attacks occurred should be a red flag. The alarm should be going off somewhere in Washington, D.C., to make them aware that this is happening across the AI models. We have seen already from the administrations, the current and the previous administration, that AI investments are critical to the future of the country, the future of national security. I did a video recently on how Anthropic and the Department of Defense are in conflict over the ability to use AI models in various ways, which I will follow up on in the future, so look out for that one. But the point here is that the United States in particular, its Western allies, are very aware of how they are positioned against their adversaries, specifically when it comes to AI. And they need to ensure that they are positioned ahead. So when China, with these adversarial nations, take a leapfrog ahead of them, it should be worrisome. And finally, we have all of the other technology companies out there who rely on these foundational models for the work that they do, producing their technology, their products and services. Well, similar to the foundational models, the Googles, the Anthropics, the OpenAIs of the world, there is a downstream effect here to them as well. When those proprietary foundational models are stolen from, and the advances of those are removed, their positioning and their market share and their carve out becomes restricted. They are no longer able to market themselves as a tool or a service that is a niche product, because there's potentially more market saturation. If there is any kind of repercussion here from the United States or other Western governments, more sanctions, something to that effect, it could impact their ability to leverage these models in their products or services. So we'll talk a little bit about that more in a second. Moving on to likely moves here. Again, starting with the Chinese government and the Chinese AI companies, their likely move is to continue this type of attack if they can get away with it. They are using every tactic and measure to continue to extract whatever intelligence they can, whether it's through AI or other technology companies. This has been beneficial for them for decades, so there's no reason to stop. What they will do with these AI companies and these AI models from Moonshot, Minimax, and DeepSeek is yet to be seen, but it's most likely going to mean that they are releasing these out into the world with the same abilities that the foundational models have, without the weights, without the controls, without the barriers and the guardrails. And that can be very dangerous. So as they see it, this is them becoming the AI leader of the world. So why stop now? So expect more of this. Expect different tactics, perhaps. We have seen in the news already that there have been Chinese citizens hired into companies, universities, students that are over here in the United States, or other Western companies, other Western universities, things to that nature, who, after a few years, establish themselves as leaders within those organizations, have access to that very lucrative material, and then send it back to China. One note here is that, as I understand it, and I am not an expert on Chinese political details, but as I understand it, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, has the ability to require any Chinese-based company to provide them access to all the data that they collect, which, as a side note, is why there has been a lot of talk about banning TikTok. So keep that in mind. So these companies, as they continue to extract intellectual property, extract data, have fewer weights, fewer guardrails, are able to use those tools to embed themselves, surveil, and extract more data, know that that data has the potential to flow into the Chinese Communist Party. What are the moves for Anthropic, OpenAI, and the foundational models? Well, right now, they need to take some active measures to detect and prevent these types of attacks much, much faster. So this is where what I would consider the core cybersecurity methodology really applies and needs to apply more to AI models, AI technologies. This attack was detected through various methods and means that have been in the cybersecurity industry for years. Watching ports, watching data flow, watching APIs and the connections that are happening through there, watching telemetry. All of that is necessary for these kinds of attacks. So what these companies must do is invest further in that. They must prepare for blocking those, restricting those accesses, identifying fraudulent accounts, identifying high activity, unusual activity across the telemetry, across API connections, whatever that might be, but acting more aggressively and more proactively. That might also mean that there's further limitations in the general public's access to these models and these tools. More to come on that. We'll see what happens, but it is entirely possible as they ratchet down their security to prevent the intellectual property theft, that also means further limitations or paywalling certain volume access to their models. I don't know. We'll see what happens. What will the Western governments in the United States do for their next moves? I fully expect there to be sanctions, trade limitations, perhaps tariffs or some other reciprocal action here. And it may not be that it's a direct response. It may not be that we see suddenly further restrictions on the sale of microchips to China, for example. It may be restrictions on soybeans. It could be some other method or means to punish China financially, economically, geopolitically, in a means to alert them that that the United States and Western governments are aware of their tactics and are displeased. So in the next few days, few weeks, we'll follow this story to see what might occur. This could potentially impact your supply chain if you rely on other trade mechanisms or have other vendors that rely on Chinese products, other services that might be out there. So keep an eye on those repercussions. And lastly, we have the other technology AI companies who rely on these foundational models. What are their next moves? Similarly to what I see happening with the foundational companies that we just talked about, ratcheting down their security, watching all of those telemetry points, all of the API accesses, really narrowing the pipe, if you will, for how access is allowed within their technologies, who are the users, who are the companies that can use that. I see similarly that happening on these other technology companies, these other businesses who build their services and their products upon those foundational models. they will also need to protect themselves from potential intellectual property theft. As China has extracted this from those foundational models, now they might look at these other companies who use them in unique and niche ways. So specific products and services that are honed off of Claude or ChatGPT that these companies are selling access to here may be the next target. So if you're one of these companies, if you use one of these companies as a vendor, they're in your supply chain, let's start talking about how you can secure yourself now against a similar intellectual property theft. And finally, what can you do? How can you protect yourself from this? Well, I kind of sprinkled this through in the last section, but the bottom line is look at your vendors, look at your supply chain. How do you use technology? How do you use the AI models? Are you producing a product or service that you are selling that is based on these models? What is your niche? What is your exposure? How can you watch those telemetry points? How can you look at who's accessing? How can you validate the accounts that are accessing this to prevent those fraud accounts, to prevent the 16 million exchanges that happened through the Claude model, and ensure that you are not ignoring that foundational cybersecurity posture. The basics still apply to you. So keep an eye on that. Make sure that you're doing those critical security tactics to keep yourself safe. Look at what's happening with trade, with sanctions. Watch the news to see what the next repercussion might be. How does the United States or Western governments respond to this distillation attack? Take a look at your supply chain now. Are there moves that you can make that will mitigate any potential risk across your supply chain so that if you are relying on companies, services, trade that potentially could be targeted, are you able to reroute that? Are you able to source from other companies, other locations that might not be affected by this? Are you selling to China? Are you selling to any of the other Western companies or governments that might be looking to sanction China for this move? Are there other customer bases that you can approach? Can you broaden your market segment? Can you look at potentially less risky customer bases? I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has been informative. Look for what might be coming down the line. And again, we'll check back on this story in a few weeks and see how we did. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for checking out Upstream Risk, and we'll see you soon.